All right, so this is a tweet from Max Olson. The Big 12 announced earlier today more hirings. They've had a slew of them in the last few days. Max Olson goes, the Big 12 partnering with Endeavor's WME Sports and IMG Media to lead global content and commercial strategy. But check the one line that he put in his tweet. The right social media strategy, advise on the use of data, sports wagering.
Yeah, that's coming in everywhere. But I would say the big key to that is that sports wagering is not legal in most of the states currently that the Big 12 is in. So if the Big 12 is going to try to throw some influence around to get that done, particularly in the state that houses its office, that would be very interesting to me because when we get whatever we get in Texas, if we do, it's going to be all or nothing. It would be sports gambling, casinos, everything or nothing. And that bill has been tied up for a while. There are, it's legal nationally now based on the Supreme Court cases, so you can vote on it. But Texas is not going to run down the door to open up sports betting, which makes no sense to me. But again, I'm not really an expert, so.
You reacted weird to my and. My and was, and what else did it say? NFTs and IP and the sports wagering part was highlighted, but there was other avenues there as well that they're clearly trying to make some money.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, and so that's why I said and, because there was more to that. But yeah, sports wagering's interesting, and that's an obvious avenue to go down if you're trying to spark interest and you're trying to create more of a money flow into the conference. I mean, I think it's inevitable at this point. That's the direction pretty much all sports is headed. We get people, who I think ask from time to time about like sports wagering and, how much do y'all do that and whatnot. And, that's the hip, thing to do at this point is basically, the sports betting market. It's been peeled back a little bit in terms of, it's got some exposure out there in a major way, and there's a lot of money flowing, but there's still places like Texas, yes, that it's in the dark and it's uncharted territory. So, yeah, I think that it seems like an obvious, course of action for a conference trying to drum up revenue and a conference trying to be new and trying to be on the cutting edge. I mean, that's one way to do it because that's not something that college sports has really had to dance with, overall. But seems, like I said, inevitable with all the money that's flowing and especially with NIL and stuff like that. I mean, at this point, how many things are we going to be able to keep away from the college game to protect the college game? I mean, it's pretty much professionalized in the football part, at least, and probably basketball as well. So it seems like it's only a matter of time for all that to be, in play.
In Europe, soccer, you can go to a stadium and place a bet at the stadium. There are sports books at the stadium, and look, I don't know what the corruption level is like, but I do know it's regulated through the government. And if you do that, then sometimes when you let people do things, then the illegal part of it kind of fades away because, they can just go do it. There's not all these other, avenues they go down to chase the action. So, eventually we're going to see it in America. You're going to be able to walk into a Major League Baseball park, an NFL stadium, or wherever, especially depending on the state, and place a bet on the game you're watching in the stadium. That's going to happen. And if college athletics doesn't get on board, then they're costing themselves dollars.
Yeah, and some of the other responses to Max highlighting the wagering. Chris Vanini, we've had him on the show. Can't believe you're ignoring all the NFT possibilities. And then Max, conference realignment is way more exciting inside the metaverse. Nicole Arbach, I'm picturing this as roller coaster tycoon. And then others, initially I read that as the WWE, and my imagination was running wild with Mike Gundy cutting pregame promos along with so much more. But the thing I've also noticed is they are adding a lot of positions that I think Brian Etheridge, one of the partners of Sikkim 365, even mentioned that there was one job you would think was obvious, like chief marketing officer. That doesn't mean they didn't have people doing things like that, but it's like they didn't have that particular role. And that Brett Yormark, one of, I'm sure, things he wanted to do was, hey, I'm going to do this. We want to find money. Then you need to let me hire some people to help us find that money, or at least figure it out how to find it and where it is.
And I also don't think the guy from New York who was running the Nets is probably just rolling into the Big 12 offices going like, yeah, this will work. I mean, come on. Like that's Bob Bowlesby had his people and they did things a certain way, but I mean, this is brand new. This is not, not that Bob Bowlesby was Mr. All Shucks or anything, but, the Big 12 was what it was under his leadership. And now it's going to be something wildly different as much as it can be under Brett Yormark. I mean, you start bringing up Endeavor and what was that, WME and whatever. I mean, that's his connections that they clearly, saw as benefits when they decided, like, yeah, he should be the guy moving forward. I mean, here's a conference who was on death's door like a year ago, basically. And now they're on the hunt in expansion. At least that's what they say. And I know that that's a calculated chess move to even say that. So I'm not sure what the end goal really is, but I think they're open for business, like Brett Yormark said. They're signing up sponsors like every other week. They're partnering with, agencies. They're mentioning getting involved in sports gambling. I mean, I think he's basically doing what he can to squeeze as much out of this conference as can be squeezed out. And we'll see where that takes him. But I think it's definitely an aggressive, but somewhat outside the box and just further down the road look than the Big 12's had probably ever in its existence, quite frankly.
Yeah, and one of the things about marketing that is interesting to me is that this is something that the conference has been, I'll just say it, abysmal at over its history. Why do we think the SEC and the Big Ten are better? And I even asked Mac about this. I think, Craig, you might not have been here that day, but about, what is the Big 12 going to do to make sure that people believe it to be the brand that it is? And why do we think the Big Ten and SEC are better? Is it because of their dominance on the football field? Well, the SEC has a little bit more skin in that game than the Big Ten does, but the Big Ten over the last 20 years has had one school that's been good regularly, okay? And elite,
yeah.
And that's Ohio State. So in the recency of all this and the marketing of these conferences, there has been a better sell job done on the public that the SEC is, the SEC, it's just better or different, whatever it is.
You know what?
Just
When
means
they
more.
say,
Just means
when
more.
they say something and come up with something, they absolutely back it up, and they make you, even if you don't believe it, believe it.
But why is Coca-Cola the best soda? Because, well, it might be, but they also spend a lot of time telling you it is. That's what the Big Ten and SEC did. The Big 12 was so bad at it, so bad at telling you why they were good. And that's why they continually have these problems, because if you look at most of the conferences and take off, if you shave off Oklahoma, Texas, and the top two brand names from every conference and get in the middle, it's all the same, really. But the Big Ten has schools that have been riding high off this for years. But what have they contributed as far as titles and things like that? Nothing, but the conference markets itself well, so the college football viewing public believes it to be better.
For example, Fox, I don't know what's going on with the Fox college football account. Like, I don't know who's running this thing. But ever since the realignment phase started this past summer, there's been obvious tweets by this account that I wonder if they're trolling Big 12 fans and Pac-12 fans and just college football fans sometimes. They had a tweet that I saw before coming over here that was the top teams, what was it? Total points per game or something like that. And it was a totally rigged formula. Because it was the most points or whatever scored by conference, and it doesn't take into account that the SEC and the Big Ten have 4 more teams. So it just puts it out there like the SEC and the Big Ten are scoring the most, but it doesn't have any caveat. It doesn't have any asterisk saying they also have 4 more teams than the team that if you did it per capita, or the conference if you did it average wise, guess who would be on top? It wouldn't be those two. It would be like the Big 12. But that's not how they positioned it, and I'm not Mr. Tinfoil Hat guy, but that was very obviously done that way for a reason. And I know that doing a tweet like that doesn't convince the world of what you're ultimately trying to pull off, but that is how you poison the water a little bit. And people aren't that smart. There's a lot of dumb people out there, and they'll just, SEC and Big Ten. But if you actually look deep into it, it's clearly the Big 12 right there. And so there's stuff like that happens. And I've especially noticed that with Fox that just made me kind of go, on the marketing side of things. And there's been a lot of that over the years. The ESPN's done a number on everybody's brains with the SEC, and they're just very fortunate that the SEC went out and won title after title after title with various teams. They're not a one-trick pony like the Big Ten was mostly, until Michigan's now been in the mix, and Michigan State's been in the mix a little bit, but Ohio State's basically carried them, certainly national title-wise. The SEC's been far deeper and had far more, teams of interest, from the Floridas to the LSUs and so on. Alabama, obviously, Auburn in there. So they backed it up. Like, I give them credit for all the insanity and like Feinbaum and all the brain, conditioning, basically. They've backed it up and made it feel like, okay, dang, it does mean more out there. It does mean more when you look at the TV ratings and all that. With the Big Ten, I feel like we've just kind of been told they matter because they're the oldest and they have the most people because they're in big old cities. And that's basically what it is. And you're supposed to respect them because they've been around the longest. And I get that there's a lot of tradition there over time. But yeah, I mean, it's pretty much been the Ohio State show. So yeah, what is the Big 12 when you think of them? In the Big 10, it's academic schools with prestige. They've been around for 100-plus years, and Northwestern and Michigan and all these schools. The SEC, no one cares more. The South and all that, the best brand of football. What is the Big 12? I don't know, man. They're not even just the Midwest Conference
they're like
anymore.
throwing darts at a dartboard the way they've tried to position themselves, and sometimes they've hit a number or they've hit a slogan, and then it's just jumped back and slapped them right in the face because something completely opposite happened, like run to champion.
Yeah.
All right, so what